This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
It's going down, no cannons inspiring. You hear that sound, it's so inspiring. Don't open new day, consider retirement. Call it quits. Don't you be mad, CBS is hiring. Broadcasting.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. We are here today for episode 53. If you're listening, you can hear us on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and of course, Podbean.com. Very special episode today. The NFL schedule was released. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm surprised you haven't checked it out, but make sure you do. We're going to have plenty of thoughts about that. And some gripes, of course, because it's the same thing every single year with the Bucs, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. First and foremost, welcome back to the show. If you're new around here, I am your host, Rhett, joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host, Mr. Bucs Football, Evan. And we are joined by a very special guest today, our buddy, returning guest, Trevor Sikkema from the Draft Network. Trevor, thank you for coming on the show today, man.
Of course, man. It's good to be back with you guys.
Of course. It's going to be a good one. Evan, how are you doing today, my buddy?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I am doing good. So as I brought up before, the NFL schedule was released, and it seems like it's clockwork every year. There's something that Bucs fans need to be up in arms about. But I think if any year is deserving of us being upset, it's got to be this year. The NFL did Tampa zero favors when it came to the schedule this year. If you haven't already seen it, here's a brief summary of what everyone is kind of upset about. The Bucs go 49 straight days without playing a home game. And during those 49 days, they'll be traveling a total of 20,378 miles to play in away games against the Rams, the Saints, the Panthers in London, by the way, the Titans, and the Seahawks. So, I mean, like I said before, it seems like every single year there's something that gets us upset about the schedule. But guys, I mean, this is, this kind of sucks.
This is unprecedentedly bad. And I think the NFL, like, seniors, like, broadcast person or whatever, like, he even said, yeah, we messed up. like, yeah, if we could have a redo, we'd probably redo Tampa's. I mean, it's just brutal. It doesn't something that you failed to mention, and I don't blame you because there's literally so many things that are terrible with this schedule, is that to start the season, they start at home against San Francisco, and then 4 days later play a divisional opponent on the road in Carolina.
And
like, what?
Kind of piggybacking against what you said, that same division opponent in Carolina, we're playing in London, and while we play them in London, we're losing a home division game. So the way to that game in London, I mean, of course, to host the Super Bowl, it's great, but it's ridiculous, dude. Evan, I mean, your thoughts on this schedule mix-up?
Well, I think they got hosed. I mean, down the stretch, it'll be nice to be at home most of the time, but I mean, it's get real. You know, that only helps a bunch if you're in playoff contention. I mean, if they're in a bunch of close games and they got to win a bunch of those games, sure, being at home will help. But yeah, I mean, especially just this schedule with them playing the NFC West, having to go to LA, having to go to Seattle, it didn't work. And the back half of their schedule, there's very little travel. They have to go to Detroit, they have to go to Atlanta, Jacksonville. But yeah, that first half is going to be brutal, and the first 3 games are now huge because the Bucs got to start off at least 2-1, or else I think the season might fade pretty fast.
And, you know, it really comes down to that football mentality. A lot of people can look at the schedule and say, oh, well, you just got to go out there and play football. And, I mean, that's what it comes down to. But, God, do they make it hard on these players. It's tough, man. It really is.
I mean, you had the bye week in there, sure. But, like, and there was a few like, fake schedules out there that had the London game week 6 but didn't have a bye week after. That's obviously, you're always going to have a bye week, which will help. But man, going from Tampa to LA to New Orleans to London, back to Tampa, out to Tennessee, from Tennessee to Seattle, back to Tampa.
It's crazy, man.
It's very rough.
Like I was saying this on Twitter. Like I don't even understand like how they got to this point. I know that now. Okay, so I worked for a football league like 4 years ago. It was like a startup football league. It was called Major League Football. I was involved in it, and me and one of the guys actually took the liberty of creating the schedule. Now, that was just a schedule for like 8 teams, and the league didn't even play or whatever, but we had to come up with a schedule for it. Coming up with a schedule is hard, like doing home and away stuff. Like, it's really difficult to come up with a schedule, and so I sympathize on that respect, and I know that every year, 2 or 3 teams are going to kind of get the short end of the stick, right? I mean, like, somebody's just got to have a rough schedule. That's the way it's got to be. This one is like unprecedentedly bad. The way that they set the Bucs up because you also have to remember going into this season, and now I know that it's the NFL and things change every year, but like they also have the 11th toughest strength of schedule. Okay, so you have like you almost have a top 10 strength of schedule difficulty. And then you have the 7 weeks where you're away from home. You have a home division game that goes to London. Your other division game is on a 4-day bye week to start the year, which no guy is in peak physical condition to start the year. Like, sure, maybe health-wise, like injury-wise, they'll feel good, but like cardio-wise, playing all 4 quarters 100% for the first time in a season. Like, nobody's ready to then 3 days later go and play another football game. It's just like Vegas had them at 6 wins, I think 3 weeks ago, which I said was crazy because I thought that they would win more than 6 games. At this point, if anything that they win that's more than 8 games is like, holy cow, they overperform because of the schedule. Like, it's that bad.
And kind of piggybacking off of what you said, you had said that there is a process to putting together the schedule. The article that I had read said that there were like 63,000 variations of this schedule before they all decided to put out the schedule that we see before us today. But I had also seen that the Raiders are in a similar situation, but you kind of compare the two. When you look at Oakland, I don't think they knew if they were going to be playing at home in Oakland until like halfway through March.
Right.
So that's a different situation, but either way, man, like what kills me about it too is
it just makes it tough.
The fact that, they did say if we could do a redo.
Yeah, that's
the NFL doesn't admit they screwed you, but if they do, then you've been screwed.
Yeah. No, you know they messed up bad.
The guy who said that, in October he's going to be rooting for the Bucs, even though they can't really say that.
We'll probably be 31 on his power rankings.
I'm just saying that's what Trevor was saying with the unprecedented part, right?
Yeah.
And schedule comes out every year. You never hear a person that makes a schedule come out and say something like that after it's been released. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, they messed up.
Oh yeah, and I don't know. But let's kind of break down this schedule. Let's take a look at what the Bucs are going to be doing. Again, we've already established first half of the season, you're really not going to see them here in Tampa. So let's kind of see what the lineup is. Week 1, they open things up against San Francisco. That's going to be an interesting game here in Tampa. Yeah, man.
Quick question for Trevor.
Yes.
Quick question. Do you think Quan Alexander's going to play in that game? Because I know Scott has said that he believes Quan Alexander is going to start on the PUP list, and it's going to be close. I think Quan's going to try to push to play because it's his old team, but I don't know if he's going to play.
So when did he tear his ACL? Do we know the exact date? Was it November, October? When was it?
It was October. It was October something, like October 22nd or something like that.
He's got a chance. You know what? I guess I'll say that yes, I think he's going to play, but it's going to be close. It really is. So I think that he'll probably start doing some activity, playing in maybe some preseason games, or not even playing. Maybe, actually, now that I think about it, that first game is probably going to be the first game action that he's going to play. And I wonder if it was any other team other than Tampa, would they let him play? So that also kind of comes into the equation, because I'm sure Quan is texting the coaches already right now saying, I am going to play in Tampa on September 8th. And the coaching staff's probably a little wary of it. So I'm not sure. It really is a total coin flip. That's a really good point because that's obviously the whole draw of the game is Quan Alexander's coming back. But I mean, wonder. It'll be close.
Even at that point, though, if he isn't 100% by the time week 1 comes around, but he's made it clear he wants to play, he's like almost ready to play. It's kind of a weird question. I can't phrase it the way that I want to. But, like, how hurt does he need to be for them to not play him at all? Because I imagine if he's not 100%, he'll be, he'll show up here and there, very limited in the game, but they'll let him play because that's what he wants.
If he's not 90% by, like, week 2 of the preseason, I don't think they're going to let him play. So, like, he's got to be, like, 90% on, like, week 2, week 3 of the preseason. He's basically got to be practicing with the full team for those 3 days in order to, or for those 3 weeks leading up to this game to have a chance to play. Because if not, then you're really putting your prized free agency pickup at risk.
$13 million torn ACL linebacker.
When you go,
exactly what I was going to say.
Your first game back is going to be an emotional game against Tampa Bay. Like that's asking a lot.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. I was going to kind of go into that as we broke down the schedule here, but San Francisco in Tampa, I feel like they just played in Tampa because they did, but now they'll be here week 1 to open up the season. That should be a good one. As Trevor, as you brought up earlier, week 2, they are going to be on the road for Thursday Night Football against Carolina. That'll be September 12th. Then they got 10 days off. Week 3 against the Giants in Tampa.
And then you don't see Tampa again until November.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of how to structure that. But after that, the boys go off the grid for a little while.
Crazy. It's crazy to think that's how the schedule shapes up. It almost feels like they don't have 8 home games. Oh wait, they don't. It almost feels like it's like not even real. Like they played the 2 home games there, and then all of a sudden it's just like road, London, road. Man, I know they go back to back at home in November, but I'm looking at the schedule now, and it's not even like they have this giant home stretch. They don't. They have 2 home games, 2 away games, 1 home game.
Back to back. Don't they go back to back in November and December? Because aren't weeks 16 and 17 back to back versus Houston and Atlanta?
Yes. So they go back to back. Those first 2 games back from that long road trip, they go home and home, but then they go away. Home, away, home. So it's like it never really like super balances out like for them. Like they have a straight month where they're just playing at Raymond James, So probably would have rather had it be the case, but here we are, I guess.
So I got a question for both of you. Would you much rather have this year's schedule or the schedule from 2 years ago where you don't get a bye week?
I would rather have the schedule where we don't get a bye week.
Yeah?
That's what I would say.
Okay.
I don't know.
You seem like you're
Evan, what do you think?
A lot of guys cherish a bye week, and I do think it affected them that season, but I might have to agree with you because you're not that season they weren't traveling nearly as much. So if you were to tell me that they would travel a lot less but not have a bye week, I think a lot of the players would take that too. And I wonder what Bruce Arians thinks about this. And you might get his thoughts on it because, if somebody asks him like that first like mini camp or rookie mini camp, whatever, he might get a question about the schedule. And we know that he doesn't really care what he says. So
I hope he's colorful with it. I really do.
That was a big. Yeah, I wonder. I think I was asking Rick Stroud either today or yesterday. I can't remember when I saw him, but I was like, who gets to complain about this? Is it Jason? Is it Bruce? Who gets to complain about the schedule? And he's like, well, it would be Bruce. I'm like, okay, well then he needs to say something about this. Like I mean, I don't know if he's going to say it at the podium next week when we get to hear from him before the draft, but I really hope that he called up somebody this morning and was like, y'all better give us favors for the next 3 years in a row because you just like ruined our season. Now, it's not exactly ruining the season. I still think they'll be fine and they'll be competitive in all of the games. But it's football, right? The NFL, anything could happen. You want any advantage you can get. And right now, this entire schedule, basically front to back for 4.5 straight months, is just a disadvantage, like a giant one disadvantage after the other. And so I know Arians isn't too pleased about that.
Yeah. Any given Sunday, right?
That's, that's what you think, but not when you've got a million road games in a row. So I don't know.
So let's wrap up this schedule really quick, and then, Trevor, we've got some draft questions for you because that is definitely your specialty. So where we left off, the Bucs play the Giants in New York week 3, and then after that, they go off of the grid for a while. Week 4, they play the Rams in L.A. Week 5, they play the Saints in New Orleans. Week 6, they play the Carolina Panthers in London. That's going to be a home game played in London, so that'll be fun. Week 7's the bye week. Week 8, they'll be on the road against the Tennessee Titans. Week 9, they'll be in Seattle playing the Seahawks. And then Week 10, they finally come home in a rematch against Bruce Arians' former team. This one should be another interesting matchup. The Arizona Cardinals. After that, they have the Saints at home. Week after that, they go to Atlanta to play the Falcons. Week 13, they're up in Jacksonville, and I might try to make that Jacksonville game. I've yet to see a game with that huge screen up there. Week 14, they play Indianapolis in Tampa, another one of Bruce Arians' former teams. Week 15, they play Detroit in Detroit. Week 16, they play the Texans at home. And then the last week of the year, they wrap things up against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, we put the schedule out there. If you haven't checked it out, I'm sure it is widely available on the internet. Or you can find it posted anywhere. But I still can't get over that. But let's move on. So, as I brought up before, Trevor, we had some draft questions loaded up. And Evan, I wanted to toss this to you, man. And what have you got?
All right, yeah. So, basically, we know a lot of the first round guys, right? The Devin Whites of the world, the Quinnen Williams, Josh Allen. Trevor, what are some guys that you think Bucs fans should have their eye on in the second and third round? Because the Bucs have a high pick in each of those rounds, so they could and should get an impact player there. What are some names that you would tell Bucs fans to keep an eye on?
Well, I think that when I'm looking at, I guess, this roster of who they need, let's operate under the assumption that they're going to pick Devin White at number 5. Okay, let's just do that for this exercise. At the top of that second round, you're probably looking to prioritize interior defensive line because I'm just telling y'all right now, you should go into this with the expectation Gerald McCoy is not going to be there in 2019. I just don't think that he's going to play for them. I think that he's not going to be on the team one way or the other, whether they do find a trade for him on draft weekend or whether they cut him altogether. That relationship between the Bucs and McCoy sounds very sour right now, and I think it would take a lot to really repair it. And so I'm not going to bet for that. So if they take Devin White there at number 5, then at the top of the second round, you've probably got to put yourself in a position to get an interior defensive lineman. Dexter Lawrence from Clemson's a guy who you could pair with Vita Vea, be some stout forces right in the middle, could move Vita Vea over to that 3-tech. He could be an oversized 3-tech player, but he could be a guy who moves really well. That way they could also be interchangeable pieces in a 3-4 front if they possibly want to do that. So that's kind of an option. I don't think a guy like Jerry Tillery is going to be there. Perhaps a guy like Jeffrey Simmons if they want to take the chance on him, but I'm not so sure they want to because Simmons tore his ACL in January. Even though he is a fantastic talent, he won't be available until really November or October. If they want to switch sides, go to the other side of the trenches, get some interior offensive line help, you're basically hoping that, Garrett Bradbury, Chris Lindstrom, or Eric McCoy are there at the top of the second round. Any of those guys I think would be really great picks as well. They'd be pretty good compliments to plug right in there at right guard. You'd have a really solid interior if that happens. But I think it's more likely that you're going to go interior in the third round, maybe a guy like Drew Samia or Elgton Jenkins, something like that. If corner's potentially an area that they're looking for, top of the second round, guys like Amani Oruwariye, who is a Tampa kid, one-year starter at Penn State, but got a lot of potential as a cover 3 corner, a guy who can play man coverage. You don't really want him impressed too often, but the Bucs already have Carlton Davis, so Carlton can be really their press man guy. They can let Amani be more of a cover 3, a guy who can read and react while still getting physical with people. And then Julian Love is probably another cornerback who I would say as well might be a guy for them to look at in the top of the second round. So there's a handful of names. They're depending on what they do, whether they're trading up or back, that could be in that second round range.
So, in all of those situations, you had said, let's assume that the Bucs are going to take Devin White at 5 if he's available. Something I wanted to ask you, something that's kind of stirred up these past few days, is the growing possibility of the Raiders taking Devin White at 4. What would that mean? I mean, obviously anything can happen. I'm sure it'll. I don't know. I wanted to get your take.
Sure. Here's, I guess, so like let's set it up this way. I think Kyler's going number 1 overall. I still think that's a lock. I don't believe the Josh Rosen stuff.
Agree.
From all the sources that I have known who are very plugged into the situation, it has been Kyler Murray, and it's going to be Kyler Murray. So that leaves Nick Bosa, that leaves Josh Allen, that leaves Devin White, and that leaves Quinnen Williams as 4
Best
players
player in the draft right there
to man up 4 spots. Okay, so that would mean the Bucs would be guaranteed to have a shot at one of those 4 players. Okay, so I think that if the Raiders end up taking Devin White over Quinnen, that's pretty far of a stretch. Let's say that Nick Bosa goes number 2 overall, just because the 49ers need more of an edge rusher than they do an interior player. The Jets, same thing. They need more of an edge rusher than an interior player. Maybe they take Josh Allen, but maybe they take Quinnen. Okay, so then in this scenario, the Bucs are ending up with one of either Josh Allen or Quinnen Williams, which is an awesome scenario for them to be in, even if they're not getting Devin White. Absolutely. I think a lot of Bucs fans would be very happy with either of those. However, then they have to cope with the reality that they might not get any kind of linebacker worth starting in this draft. And that's really dangerous, because right now, in a defense that wants to get more versatile, more 3-4 friendly, potentially have more linebackers on the field, they have one starting caliber linebacker right now. It's Levante David. Everybody else is a backup linebacker at best. They're fill-in players, and a guy like Deion Buchanan, he's a specialization player. He's a guy who you can play more week to week depending on the opponent. He's not a full-time guy. Riley Bull is never going to be a full-time guy. Kevin Minter played great in spurts last year, but how much are you depending on him, right? So at that point, you look at Levante David as the only starting linebacker. Levante's been hurt the last couple of years. If Levante David goes down, you're screwed. You've got no linebackers. And so that's why it works for them to pick Devin White, not only because he's a good player, but because, unfortunately, really just because of the way the salary cap was. The Bucs have kind of pigeonholed themselves here a little bit, because this class is not deep at linebacker. If you don't get one of the Devins, I don't think you're getting a guy that you can start early on. And the Bucs need a guy who can start early on. So where I think Quinnen Williams would be a home run pick, I think Josh Allen would be a fantastic pick. If they get one of those guys, there's 2 sides to the coin, because you got to be happy, and then you got to be a little bit worried, because you're basically just praying Levante is healthy all 16 games. And then even if he is, you've got to get linebacker production from somebody else. So certainly I think edge play and defensive line play in general, more important than a linebacker need. But I think for this Bucs team and this Bucs roster specifically right now, that linebacker need is glaring. So I think that it's a little interesting once you kind of play that game of, hey, what if they took this different guy instead? Well, then there's a chain reaction of who might be available and if that works long term.
Absolutely.
Well, Trevor,
yeah,
I think you could agree with me here that the Bucs would be willing to take that risk if it meant getting Quinnen Williams, because he's a special player.
Sure. I think that, with all that said, Quinnen Williams is number 1 on their board. They will take Quinnen Williams if he's there at 5. All that to say that. Yeah.
Actually, one more thing for me, and then Rhett could toss you a few. I had this theory that the Jets hold the key to the Bucs draft, and it's because the Jets have been in rumors that they want to trade down. Let's say that the Jets do trade down, because if they trade out for a team looking for a quarterback and Kyler goes 1, the Bucs are guaranteed to get either Josh Allen or Quinn Williams just to sit there.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of think that the Raiders, while Quinn Williams is the better player, kind of think the Raiders need an edge more than the interior. Would you agree with me there?
Yeah, no, depth chart wise, certainly. Yeah.
So would you think that if the Jets would trade out, do you think that could mean that Quinn Williams would end up in Tampa?
I mean, so I'll just say this. I do a podcast called the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, and right now we're doing something called a guest mock draft, where we have had a beat reporter from every single team in the NFL come on and tell us a little bit about the team, tell us who they're thinking about picking, what their draft strategy looks like, and then make a pick in this mock draft. And it's been a lot of fun. It's given us a lot of insight. The 49ers and the Jets people, both of them said these teams are looking to trade out. They're looking to trade back. So, like, if somebody wants to move up for a quarterback, maybe a different edge rusher, who knows? I mean, the Bucs are hoping that as many quarterbacks go in front of them as they possibly can. So, in this scenario, yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe the Jets do end up trading back. Somebody moves up for a quarterback. Then the Bucs just have the pick of the litter of basically all of these guys that they're going to want. They're going to have options then at that case at number 5. And so, no, I think that's a good point. The Jets definitely are a linchpin in what could be the end results of this entire draft, especially for the Bucs at 5.
So
yeah, one more quick thing here, and you don't have to give any explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Devin White is sitting there. Josh Allen's sitting there at 5. I think the Bucs would end up taking Devin White. Who do you think they would end up taking?
I think they would take Devin White.
Yeah, I agree.
I think so too. I think the Bucs big board right now is Quinnen Williams number 1 overall, Nick Bosa's number 2, Devin White's number 3. That's what I think.
And I want to go on record here and say too, it's kind of been established before, but Devin White is. I really wanted to play out where the Bucs draft Devin White as opposed to Quinnen Williams. I understand that Williams is a talent that he's going to be a really, really good player, and I'm sure if he's available, he'll do great things, but. Trevor, exactly what you said. I mean, you couldn't have put it any better. The longevity and the glaring need for a linebacker that you can play and kind of just plug in and get going. I think that's everything Devin White is looking to be.
They need him.
Yeah.
They need him badly. Yes.
So moving on from the draft, my next few questions for you here as we kind of wrap things up, more so personnel. First and foremost, we had brought this one up last week on the show, but I didn't really get anywhere with it. I wanted to ask you if you've heard what's going on with Kendall Beckwith. I mean, we knew the last I had heard was that his injury was worse than we initially thought it was. He still hasn't been cleared to work out or practice last I had heard. So, I mean, do we have an ETA or a pace or anything going on there?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, man. I'll be shocked if Kendall Beckwith plays football again. I really will, because we're like a year removed from his accident, and he's had 2 setbacks that we know of. And Jason Light said that he is still flying around the country to get different opinions and different things. Like, you are only doing that at this point because the news that you're getting from the doctors you've already talked to is not good. So I don't know, man. I think that Kendall Beckwith is going to be fine, like, as a person. Like, I think he'll recover. Like, I think he can walk and everything.
He's not going to die.
Right, like, but in terms of, like, him playing football again, if you made me put money on the line, I'd tell you he's not going to play football again. So it's a chance.
Well, Rhett,
yes, sir.
You were joking around that he might die. I'm just saying the rumor was that this accident was really bad. He could have died.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I don't know the details of the accident, but Jason Light said last year when it happened, when he was informing us about it, that they said, like, we're lucky that Kendall's alive. And I was like, what? Like, what happened? And so that was, so I mean, yeah, that's kind of, that tells you the severity of the accident.
Wow, well, now I feel terrible. Thanks, guys. Moving on to my final question for you. It has to do with our running back. Not Peyton Barber, but Ronald Jones. Last I had heard, he is impressing. Jason Light has said some good things about him. He's looking promising. Now, I kind of wanted to ask not only your take on Ronald Jones in general, but just do you think he can turn it around and I don't know about flourish. I don't think he's going to break out and be one of the top 5 running backs in the league, but I just want him to live up to the hype and have so many people stop dismissing him as a bust.
Yeah, let me first just say this. How many downs of football has Ronald Jones played this offseason?
I think like...
Yeah, 0, actually. You said
I don't really... I apologize.
Yeah, no, I said this offseason. So I don't really know where all the talk comes of like, oh yeah, he's been impressing, blah blah blah. What? Like in the weight room? Come on, he's an NFL athlete.
Talk.
Of course he's gonna. Come on, so that was kind of funny. I laughed when I heard that. Like, oh yeah, Ronald Jones is impressing everybody. He hadn't touched a football in organized game. Like, come on, let's be real about it. But all that to say, you got a year of Ronald Jones kind of living this Tampa Bay life. You hope he's a lot more comfortable than what he clearly was. And I think the main thing, though, the offensive line's got to be better, man. I watched every single Ronald Jones carry from last year. I went back and I did a study of it. He got nothing. They gave that dude nothing to run for. Now, don't get me wrong, the offensive line scheme was way contrastly different between Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones, and they continued to try to run outside stretch zones when Ronald Jones is in the game, and the offensive line clearly couldn't do it, and whatever. It was kind of the offensive line was to blame, and Jones was to blame. So a lot of it is still out of his control, and it really, man, it's just about Jones looking in the mirror. He's just got to have confidence. He's got to be able to see things. He's got to have a sense of comfortability that he clearly just did not have last year. And look, man, the talent didn't go away. That speed's still there. That home run ability we saw at USC, it's all still there. He's got to use it.
Okay. That makes me feel
really
better.
Fast, Trevor. Really fast, yes or no, before you get out of here. Bucs drafted a running back in the first 4 rounds.
Oh, the first 4.
I did that sweet spot because I would have
told you it's somewhere between I'm gonna say yes to that just because I think it's gonna be in the 4th round. So we barely get there. That was a good question.
So, Trevor, we appreciate you coming on the show. We know you got to get out of here soon, but before you go, tell us a little bit about the Draft Network and where can people check you out.
Yeah, sure. TheDraftNetwork.com. It's a new company that I work for along with Peter Port. Basically, we're trying to be your one-stop shop for everything draft. If you want to learn about a prospect, we've got all kinds of scouting reports for you. But then after you learn about them, we don't just want that to be the last thing. We've got to build your own big board machine, and we got a mock draft machine where we want you, the people who love the draft and care about the draft, to learn enough about it to make your own rankings, make your own mock drafts, and all that kind of stuff.
I've spent way too much time on that mock draft machine, by the way.
Well, that brings a smile on my face because I love hearing that people are using it. But it's been a ton of fun working for them. This is just phase 1 of the stuff that we're gonna go into next year and do. It's gonna be even bigger and better after that. So yeah, draftnetwork.com and then Draft Network basically on every social site you can find.
Awesome. Trevor, thank you so much for coming on the show. Folks, you can find Trevor on Twitter and Instagram. One of my favorite people to follow on Twitter, by the way. It is pretty funny stuff. But thank you so much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon.
Of course, guys. We'll chat soon.
Awesome.
Thanks, Trevor.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Trevor Sikkema from the Draft Network and Pewter Report coming on the show with us today for episode 53. Now, Evan, you have anything on your mind? Because, honestly, I think
I sort of got a bone to pick with you a little bit there.
Oh, with me?
Yeah.
Was it about the Kendall Beckwith dying thing?
No. Did you seriously not know that, that was serious, though?
Wait, about what?
Like that he could have died.
I knew it was serious, but, I didn't know. Okay, so it was about the Kendall Beckwith dying thing.
No. I'm just saying that because that's what you brought up first, and then I'm going to get to my point.
Okay.
But did you not know?
I did not know that it was so severe he had almost he could have died. I did not know it was to that severity. So if anyone is listening who was upset with my joke, I sincerely apologize.
It's all good.
First apology you'll get from me on the show. Hopefully the last.
Okay, so one thing. When we were talking about Quinn Williams and stuff, you said that Quinn Williams would be great and all, but Devin White's needed more, right? So would you take Devin White over Quinn Williams? They're both there.
For me, and this is just the way that I look at it. This is
if you're the general manager.
You want a yes or no answer. You don't want a big drawn out explanation.
I want Quinn Williams or Devin White. Who you taking?
Devin White.
Oh my God!
Listen, Trevor explained it any better than
You're passing on the safest pick in the draft.
Safest pick in the draft, but what does this team need more right now?
Once Sherrod McCoy's gone, who are your defensive linemen?
We've got Vita Vea, We've got Vita Vea, who's evolving. I think he's gonna do some really good things in the future. I mean, listen, man. Devin White at linebacker
is good.
On a team that needs linebackers.
I have a tough time.
Go
ahead.
If it comes down to it, and the Bucs pick Devin White, and Quinnen Williams isn't on the board, then you can't be mad at me.
Yeah, no. But if they pick Devin White and Quinnen Williams on the board, you're doing this podcast alone.
Oh no,
I'm done. I will never understand that, and there's no way you can justify that. No way. I'm sorry.
So that's a cold take for you.
I understand you saying, well, you need this, need and stuff like that. Dude, Quinnen Williams, and there's stuff coming out now that Quinnen Williams aced the interview process. They said he handled it like a franchise quarterback would. Like, dude, this guy's perfect.
And he still got braces.
And that's good. And he threw shade at Kyler Murray before they played. So, dude, I have a tough time. He's number one. He's definitely number one on their board, and I think I would pick Quinnen Williams, and I think if you would pick Devin White, but I think you think they would pick Quinnen Williams, right?
Oh, I imagine. Don't get me wrong. I think realistically, if Quinnen Williams is on the board,
it doesn't
Devin
matter
White
who else
on
is
it
there.
does. Yeah, I think he's number one for the Bucs right now. But in my position, I like to look out for what the team needs the most. And we've been known these past few years for having a fairly solid linebacker core. I kind of want to keep that going and put some stability in there.
Question: how many wins has that linebacker core got you? Just saying. You talk about the solid linebacker core. How many wins? It doesn't matter.
Not enough,
right? It's exactly wins. Look on the roster. How many young, dominant defensive line players do the Bucs have? Vita Vea, okay. Noah Spence, he's still a huge question mark.
You've got a lot of JPP. Carl Nassib has upside.
Carl Nassib, his upside is what he did last year, I think. I don't really think there's much more to Carl Nassib. He's decent as a rotational piece, but to Carl Nassib, I don't think there's much more. You're gonna get 6 sacks.
Oh, I'm not saying he's gonna play the best day of his. I'm not saying his best days of his career are ahead of him, but I think he's solid. He's a younger guy.
Solid.
I think he's going to be in Tampa for a while. I have a good feeling that he's going to be in Tampa for a while.
We'll see. I just don't know, man. You look at the defensive line. JPP, he's got this year on his contract. He's got next year, but next year's not guaranteed at all. So if they could cut ties with him, and I don't know. I seriously don't know.
This cap space situation is what makes me nervous for the future here.
Well, it's not too bad. Next year it'll get better because, unfortunately, they don't have to sign as much as their draft class. Vernon Hargreaves, they might pick up his fifth-year option. It's not as much as a quarterback fifth-year option.
I gotta see what Vernon Hargreaves does this year.
Yeah, I know. But I think the Bucs has to make a decision on that before the season. That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So Noah Spence, you guys see how he plays before he gets a deal. If he does, it won't be big. The biggest one would be Jameis Winston. Even then, you don't know if you're paying him yet. So they have a chance to have a lot of cap space. Right now, if you look on overthecap.com, I believe, and you go to 2020, what's on the books, they have $60 million available in cap before the Winston extension, before Vernon Hargreaves possible extension, Noah Spence possible extension. So, and there's not, if you look at the players' contract expiring, there's not too many big names. So they should be fine for next year with cap. It won't be like this year. They won't be as cap strapped. But I don't know, man. I look at that defensive line. You need young talent because I mean Jason Pierre-Paul is not going to be here forever. At most, I can't see him. I can't see the Bucs re-signing him probably. Not at 32 years old, and he might want a good bit of money, and the Bucs are going to be thinking about drafting his replacement soon. So I think you got to go with the young defensive line. Devin White's good. Quinn Williams is just so good. And honestly, I might take Devin White over Josh Allen. I don't know when it push comes to shove if I actually would, but I'd seriously consider it because I do think that Devin White's good. But
Devin White or Ed
I don't
Oliver?
know. Ed Oliver. They should take Ed Oliver. They should, like I said, they should take Ed Oliver. They will take Devin White. And they should take Ed Oliver just because of the reason I was saying. Young defensive line. Ed Oliver next to Vita Vea, sign me up.
Man.
Sign me up. Well, that would be those two interior guys. If Ed Oliver work out, Vita Vea continues to develop. I'm going to say it right now. That would end up being one of the most dominant Tampa defensive lines you've ever seen. And this defense in the late 90s, early 2000s was really good. And this defensive line featured Warren Sapp and Simeon Rice. And I'm saying that with Ed Oliver and Vita Vea, and same thing with Quinn Williams and Vita Vea, you could see one of the best defensive lines in Tampa Bay history.
All right. Well,
not next year, but with time, I'm saying.
I don't disagree with you. And yeah, the idea of a player like Vita Vea and Quinnen Williams or even Ed Oliver flourishing not only right around the same age, you know what I mean? Talking about building a whole new identity for that defensive line.
Quinnen Williams is like 21 years old. Like, he's very young. Like,
oh, yeah.
He's one of the youngest players in this class. And one thing I will say, though, we're not talking about Nick Bosa at all because out of the three defensive linemen, Nick Bosa probably has the least chance to go to the Bucs, just because all the teams in front of him need edge so bad. 49ers, they need an edge more than interior. Jets, they need an edge more than interior. Raiders, they need edge more than interior. So let's say the 49ers and Jets trade out. Okay, then the Raiders are going to take Nick Bosa. Like there's no possible way to get Nick Bosa on his football team. Like, I just don't see, unless something stupid happens and somebody overdraft somebody drastically, I can't see it. So that's why we're really not talking about Nick Bosa much, if you guys are wondering.
Well, saying all of that to say this, no matter what happens, no matter who's number one on the draft board, when it comes to draft night in a little under a week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will take Zion Williamson at number 5.
Oh, boy. Well, he's going to be a great... You want to talk about like a linebacker, defensive lineman hybrid.
At 18 years old? Jesus, man.
Yeah, you can build around him. Maybe playing some strong safety, Justin Evans with Zion right next to him. Maybe some tight end.
You can't take him out in a party post-game till his 4th year in the league.
Trade... until his rookie contract's done. Trade Brait, right? Trade Brait for a third and have Zion back up OJ, 2 tight end set.
Oh, yeah.
OJ could be, Zion could be the fullback and stuff. But, yeah. What was I about to say? God.
Was it about Ed Oliver and Quinnen Williams?
Might have been about Ed Oliver and Quinnen Williams. I can't remember. If it comes back to me, I'll let you know. But, yeah, right now, it just slipped my mind. So.
All right. Well, feel free to interrupt me at any time,
because
what I was actually about to say is, ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for this episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, whether it's on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or Podbean. Thank you to our special guest, Trevor Sikkema from the Draft Network, coming on. Make sure you guys go check him out. A lot of good content being put up over there. And as Evan had brought up earlier, try out the big board. Try out the mock draft machine. It's a lot of fun. You'll spend a ton of time on it, and it'll be awesome to see what you come up with. If you do use it, make sure you shout at us on social media. Let us know what your mock draft and your big boards look like. Speaking of that, you can follow the show on Instagram at Cannon Fire Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Cannon Fire Pod. You can follow my co-host Evan at Bucs Wave, formerly Bucs Football, on Instagram and Twitter. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS, if you're into that kind of thing. Also, check out our partners at PewterReport.com for some of the best Bucs coverage in the game. I am Rhett, signing off for Evan. and we'll see you next time. Go Bucs!